Your hosts are here, Sammy and Michelle. By the end of this podcast, you'll know them well. Adulting, navigating the journey of life. Careers to relationships, pain and strife. Put down the rule book, rethink the status quo. If there's another direction you wanna go, find purpose, passion and mastery in all that you do with Status Post Adulting.
Hey, Status Post Adulting family. This is Sammy
and Michelle.
And today we are speaking with Jess. Jess founded Oak and Grain, where she refinishes furniture in Raleigh, North Carolina. Through her diligence, she has now sold multiple pieces, built a substantial Instagram following, and she's a member of the Carolina Furniture Collective. She did all of this while working full-time as an emergency room physician assistant. Jess and I actually met in physician assistant school. Welcome to Status Post Adulting, Jess.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It is a total honor. I've become a pretty big fan over the last, month or so since I got caught up with Sammy and realized that you guys were doing this. I think it's awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we've also become big fans watching your behind the scenes videos, which is part of the reason I talked to Sammy and was like, we need to bring Jess on. She's really going at it and I want to learn more about this whole side of her business. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Jess.
I'm so glad you had me. I'm really excited to be here.
So Jess, to get started, we did want to give a little bit of background to our listeners. And so can you tell us a little bit about Oak and Grain?
Yeah, so Oak and Grain is just a name I gave what started as a little hobby. Essentially, I refinish furniture, and I do that in a combination of ways. In some situations, I go out and source my own furniture and refinish that with my own design. But I've also gotten into some custom work and commission work, essentially meaning I take other people's furniture and I refinish it to their liking or a design that they have in mind. And my whole goal is to take outdated, tired furniture, whether that be crap that's headed to the landfills, overlooked in thrift stores, or maybe a family heirloom that's just been passed around to the family's attic shared space because no one actually likes it, and giving it a space to be loved and cherished in the modern home.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the sustainable aspect of your business as well. How did you first get into this? How did this even start?
Well, my very type A has to be busy all the time self was pretty stir crazy during COVID when lockdown hit. I was blessed in that my normal work day wasn't really affected. Being an ERPA, I was still going to work, normal hours. Work looked fairly similar, more stressful. But in my off time, which is 15 days a month, usually I'm spending that time traveling, visiting friends, being fairly social, and that was totally squashed during COVID. So I really was looking for any kind of project that was going to make me excited to wake up and stay at home. So I started I had an old childhood dresser that I have had since I was a kid. And I thought, maybe I should just give this a little update and that'll keep me busy for a couple months. So that was my first project, just looking for something to do to keep me busy and occupied. So I started with an old childhood dresser that I stripped down, which is pretty involved. I didn't realize this. I didn't know anything, so I'm Googling every step of the way how to accomplish this because I've never done anything like this before. And I refinished my childhood dresser, and I was like, wow. It took me a month or two, but I was like, wow, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that process. So in effort to continue this distraction from being quarantined, I bought a couple pieces on Facebook Market, really with no intention of keeping them for myself. I just wanted to continue refinishing. And a month later, when I was done with that piece, I sold it. I posted it on Facebook Market to sell. And it was gone and claimed within 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh my goodness, this could be like a legit hobby. So I was really selling my pieces just to fund the hobby initially, and then it just kind of blossomed into kind of a business on accident, just doing what I like.
When you say that you started and you didn't know anything, you were Googling everything, did you truly have like absolutely no experience with this? Or was there anything that you had done in the past? Or was it you're just like, I want to do this and let me figure it out?
It was pretty much, I want to do this and let me figure it out. The closest thing to experience I would say I had was like helping my mom paint my bedroom growing up, which is like not even close. So I had to buy a paintbrush. I was trying to keep my costs low. So I was using leftover paint that my landlord had in the closet of my apartment. And I had to buy a paintbrush. I had to buy a sander. I had to like Google what the different grits of sandpaper were, which for the average person doesn't sound crazy, but like now being deep into the refinishing community, it just sounds so crazy that I was really clueless at the beginning.
That's so
Yeah,
funny.
that's so funny.
I feel like I would be like, yeah, I could just rub it really hard with my hand. I'm sure that's just as good.
Well, I might be embarrassed if any of my furniture friends listen to this, but at one point I was using nail file, and I thought that was okay.
It's really like
Seems
inch
a
by
form
inch.
of sandpaper.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it is sandpaper, right?
I love that though, because I think when you get started doing anything and doing anything new, sometimes I know I'll get overwhelmed because I'll think, oh, I need to have all these things and I need to know like at least this much baseline. And the truth is, you really just need to get whatever you can to get you started. And then you'll get better and learn, and you can invest more money into it as you go on if you want to. But if the nail filer works when you're starting and you're just doing it and it's for you, then who cares? It works.
Yeah, no, that's really a good point, Michelle, because I think a lot of people get paralyzed when they start to do something and they talk themselves out of it, whether it be like lack of experience or lack of supplies. But the truth is, these types of things, even not related to furniture finishing, it's surprising how quickly it can grow just by slowly building your skills or slowly investing into something like this. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've been surprised to watch over the last year and a half. Year and a half, yeah.
So with these pieces that you were finding, like after the first one, you used something that you already had. Did you start going to Facebook Marketplace to find furniture? Like, how did you find the next pieces that you would do?
Yeah, really. Facebook Market was the first sourcing option that I used. But as time has gone on, I have started looking more at Habitat Restore has several stores here in the Triangle area. And I enjoy supporting that business. I feel like I'm not only working towards sustainable furniture and I like the greenness of that, but also donating to a good cause. And estate sales, you'd be surprised how inexpensive you can find just about anything from like online auctions or estate sales. So that's mainly where I find stuff now.
That's awesome.
And, in the beginning, it's like you're doing a few pieces. When did you like realize this is becoming like a real business or this is really blowing up?
I think after maybe the second or third piece I sold, because at that point I made my business Instagram account, and that was encouraged by one of my friends. And I think it was just her nice way of saying, hey, we don't want to see this on your personal Instagram page anymore. We're sick of watching this, like, make its own space. But honestly, I'm so glad I did because I gained some local following, which then turned to local clientele that either purchased the pieces that I had designed or even came to me for commission work. So I think it was a good decision.
When it comes to starting to build your brand, how did you even like come up with the name Oak and Grain?
Honestly, that was a pretty daunting task. It makes it seem so official. Like when you start an Instagram page or you come up with a business name, I think that can also be kind of paralyzing.
Yeah.
The options are endless. So I really wanted it to be something meaningful, something that I felt was a nod to the roots that gave me this desire to create or build or make things pretty. And honestly, my dad was a huge, he was a super handy guy and did a lot of woodworking. So I wanted to acknowledge my dad in some way. He passed a few years ago. But one of his favorite places on earth was out in Missouri where he lived before he died. There was a tree there, and it was a big bur oak tree. And he was so proud to bring his friends there when they came to visit. He just loved this tree, and there was some kind of tale. I wish I could remember. Some kind of tale that this is the biggest oak tree that survived so many droughts over many, many years. And it's one of the oldest oak trees east of the Mississippi. And there's tales that Abraham Lincoln brought his girlfriends there to have little rendezvous and stuff. There's all these little tales. But he loved this tree. And that's where I came up with the oak part of my name, and the logo is actually the big bur oak tree.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is so sweet. That's so thoughtful.
And then I wanted a nod to just where I grew up. My mom's side of the family, my grandfather and uncle owned their own painting company, which I just kind of found ironic.
Wow.
They paint houses and stuff. And I grew up in Indiana, which I think is known for farming and grain fields. So yeah, it's a combination of a nod to my dad and a nod to where my roots are in the Midwest.
Oh, wow. That's I had no idea that it had so much meaning behind it. That is such a thoughtful name.
Yeah.
And shout out to the Midwest.
Yes, shout out to
Yeah,
Midwest.
go Midwest. Midwest is best.
We love a Midwestern gal.
Yes.
I mean, you have a good following on social media. I think you do a really good job of capturing the work that you do, always talking to the camera. It's almost, I would imagine, like finishing ASMR, but I don't know much about either of those spaces. How did you start to incorporate social media into your brand and into your marketing strategy?
That's a great question. I think the main reason I started the new Instagram page was I just wanted an outlet to share this new skill or new talent that I had acquired. But as I made that Instagram account and moved into what I found to be this wonderful furniture refinishing community, I learned a lot. So I would post stories, posing questions within the stories, and I was shocked how many people would respond, sometimes overwhelmingly so, with answers and responses to my struggles or questions. So found this community that helped me grow. So that was a huge reason I was more interactive on social media, and it's a great place to sell my pieces to local following. So that's been really great, not having to use Facebook Market quite as much because people be crazy there.
Yeah,
Some
definitely.
people are crazy. So yeah, it's been both for my own personal growth, but also for building my business and building my local clientele. And I think after you guys just said talked about the benefits of being off of social media.
Oh, no, please.
No, this is a great positive use of social media.
Yeah, no, that's true.
The actual
That's true.
community aspect of it.
So yeah, I found this amazing furniture refinishing community that I did not even know existed. And I'm talking thousands of people have this same hobby that I have. And it's so exciting to be able to have my happy place where I can talk very freely about my newfound passion and spare my boyfriend the little struggles or exciting milestones that I hit. I have my friends that appreciate this, and I think it's good for me, good for Kevin.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. I mean, I think when you got into it and then I saw all these people who were so into it, it's insane. It's a huge community.
Yes, it's crazy. And I thought I was being so unique when I
Yeah.
started this. And then I get on my Instagram and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really not unique. There's so many people that love this. But I truly think it's great. And I think the hobby really attracts people that have that desire to create and make pretty things out of unassuming objects or unassuming pieces of furniture. And I love seeing people take literal trash and make it something useful. It's sustainable, which I think also attracts a lot of people.
So, Jess, you spoke a little bit about this, but could you describe to us the process from getting a new piece to the end project that we see online?
Yeah, thanks so much. That's a really good question. I think in the world of like reels and TikToks where we see like things happening so quickly, people may not fully understand like all of the steps involved in the process. It definitely takes more than 15 seconds to flip most of these pieces, but sourcing is step number one, which sounds really easy. But when you think about it, you really have to do a lot of digging through Facebook Market, through thrift stores. That could be like driving around to multiple thrift stores or spending hours scrolling through online auctions and then scheduling a time to get that picked up and delivered to your space. I actually have a delivery guy that does all of that for me, thank goodness, because most of these pieces do not fit in my 2011 Corolla. But once I actually get them to me, there's sometimes quite a bit of cleaning that takes place. If you think about this being in an attic for many, many years, you might be surprised what you may come across. And after cleaning, I work on repairs, and repairs can vary. Sometimes it's just little dings in the wood that need a little bit of filling, or sometimes I'm rebuilding drawers or adding new legs. Recently, I repaired a leg that a dog had chewed on. So the repairs can definitely vary, and sometimes that's one of the most time-consuming processes. Sometimes clients will request structural repairs if they want to have shelves removed or new legs, new bases built. That can certainly take up a lot of time and materials. And then we get to the fun part. I start by sanding down the entire piece. I prime it. I paint it with usually at least 2 to 4 coats of paint. Then it requires top coating. Most paints require top coating. And then oftentimes I will replace existing hardware with new hardware. And that means filling in old hardware holes, measuring and drilling new hardware holes. Or if we're keeping the existing hardware, that does take time to polish up or paint the actual hardware to freshen it up. And then one of my favorite steps, staging and photographing. That includes either moving the piece into my home, or I have staging floor that I use in my garage, and making the piece look presentable and pretty, photographing it, editing it, and then eventually listing and selling it.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot, especially the structural aspect of it. I think that's something people could easily overlook. A lot of times I do see like you change the drawers and then the drawers have to be functional. Like it's like that is stressful.
Trust me, drawer repairs are the most stressful part.
It's really gratifying to look at the Instagrams and see the before and after. And it's just like, oh my God, I would have never thought of that. Do you know before you go into a piece what you're going to change, or does it happen as you go? Like, how do you approach that?
So when I do my own design outside of like custom or commission work, this sounds so cheesy, but I really just kind of let the piece show me what it wants to do.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you go in with too specific of an idea, like you want to leave the top natural and you go to sand on the top, and the tops, once you get it all sanded down to the natural wood, it's actually kind of ugly or it has like weird stain on it. Instead of like fighting that, I just try to like work with the piece. It's like, if you have curly hair, you don't always have to straighten it. Like sometimes it's easier just to go with your curly hair. So I try to just work with the piece. And sometimes that means my initial design idea is totally out the door and I'm on to like plan D, C, or E. Sometimes it works out. It's a little tougher when I'm doing like custom work because people come to me with an idea in mind. But usually my clients are pretty flexible. If I say, hey, this isn't going to work out, this piece is not meant for X, Y, and Z. But I think that the kind of clientele that I deal with, they understand that. They understand that like antique or used furniture comes with its unknowns, if you will.
Yeah. And I will say, Jess, I do feel like you always have an eye for design. I just remember us in PA school and I had my like apartment. I had like a twin bed with like a bright red
on the floor.
now on the floor. with a bright red comforter, and like
Which we're still paying
we're
for.
still paying for that. It's back here.
Can't see on the podcast. Our parents have kept it forever. The ugliest color.
Shout out. Shout out to the comforter.
And I remember going to your place, and it was so cute. And I remember it was just so well designed and like so organized, but also just beautiful.
Aw, thank you.
And I was like, whoa. I just never even thought about doing this.
This is BA school? What?
Yeah, I know. It's just like it's so refreshing to be in that space too.
I will say, I think I've always had a knack for making things aesthetically pleasing, but on a really low budget.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you remember, Sammy, but the design on my wall, I just got sample paint from Home Depot and I just painted designs on my wall with a sample paint. I didn't like paint the whole wall.
Wow. That's
So it
crazy.
looked like art, but it actually was just like a $2 sample can. I think I've put borders up with painter's tape and just painted like 3 rectangles on the wall and hung sconces in them. So it really was probably $15 or less total, but it looked fancy-ish.
Yeah. I think just the way you naturally are, you're not trying to like find the most extravagant ways to make things look good. You're using what you have and like being resourceful. I think that also just makes it really exciting. Like I think it was one of your videos where you were doing what's it called where you like get it ready to take the photo?
Oh, staging?
Staging, yes. And I think you had like bottles of like detergent or something that you had
Yeah.
like painted to look like
Yeah.
vases or something. I was like, this is so smart.
Yeah, I try to be resourceful in that way. I think it's more fun that way. Like anybody can go to Target and buy a beautiful home decor item, but it's the challenge of turning something totally unexpected into like a piece of decor for pennies is just so much more exciting to me. Like the example Sammy's talking about, I took all of this stuff that I had in my recycling, I pulled out and I found like interesting shapes and I mixed paint with baking soda and I painted it, but it was nice and like thick, so it almost looked like clay. And then I put greenery in it. So it was actual like garbage.
That's so crazy. And it looks gorgeous. You guys definitely have to check out Jess's Instagram because it's hard to like describe via podcast, but these things are so beautiful. I've never seen furniture like this. It's so gorgeous and it's just also so unique. You wouldn't find it. Like even at like nicer furniture stores, you're not going to find this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's not only unique because of the design, but furniture these days is really kind of crap.
Yeah.
They make it cheaply in a factory. It's mainly made out of like fake wood or particle board or MDF, whereas these pieces that I'm working on are full wood pieces, like full solid wood with handcrafted wood sliding drawers. The craftsmanship of these pieces is just unlike anything that they make now. So they really are treasures, and some are beautiful in their natural state, but unfortunately just time wears on them and they need a little love sometimes. But they're certainly going to last many, many, many years compared to maybe the stuff that we're buying at like Walmart or Target that's mass produced.
Yeah.
No offense to IKEA. I have plenty of IKEA furniture in my house.
Yeah.
I think it's such a great opportunity for people too, who, if you're moving between places, you have to, get rid of furniture, buy new furniture. And if you do it every single time and you're purchasing everything new, it can definitely be expensive. There are alternatives. You can actually have a higher quality piece. I also appreciate being able to like purchase something that is recycled, has been around for a while, and not something that, encouraging like the mass production of so many more things in the world.
Definitely. And as I've really gotten to know this community, you may be surprised at the number of refinishers within your own community. So that's definitely something worth looking into. Oftentimes, the refinishers are going to be selling pieces for very reasonable prices. So it might be worth looking into. See if there's somebody in your local area that you could not only support their small business, but help support the sustainability of this awesome hobby. Or if you have the eye for design, It doesn't have to be very involved. It really doesn't. There's kind of a spectrum of furniture refinishing. This could be like a simple DIY weekend project that you paint grandma's dresser with some really easy to use furniture paint. Or you could be a little more on the professional end with really high grade equipment, but it doesn't have to be crazy. It's easily something you could do in like a little weekend project most of the time.
Yeah, and I do see on your Instagram you have like a lot of instructive video tutorials on like how to like solve specific issues, which I think is very cool. Is that part of how you formed your following, or was that more like a response to the people that were following you on Instagram?
That's a really good question. I think it was part of the reason I was able to build the following that I have because I was still fairly new. I take my followers along for what I'm learning, and sometimes it's very humbling. But I really do try to remember what it was like to know nothing, because I think when you get really deep into anything, into any specialty, it's easy to forget what you didn't know at the very beginning. So I really do try to be conscientious of that and keep things simple for any beginner that's watching my page, or maybe even someone that's considering getting into furniture refinishing and is just watching my stories to gain information and to gain knowledge. But yeah, I've gained a lot of like beginner followers or people just interested in what I'm doing because I try to be informative and walk you through the really simple basic steps of what I'm doing.
I will say, Jess, that's something that really struck me about your Instagram stories was how open you were about really your growth mentality in all of this. I remember watching one video and you specifically were like, I'm not sure how to do this, but we're going to try it. And I'm a little nervous. And I think it helps so much to see that even as somebody who's not involved in the same hobby, it's still really motivating to be like, okay, maybe she didn't just wake up one morning and start flipping furniture. Maybe she actually learned this like a normal human being, and I can learn something as well. If Jess can, sand down a desk, I can figure out how to edit a podcast.
No, that's a good point. I do try to be transparent with it, and I do try to be transparent with the struggles of it. Nowadays, there are so many reels and TikTok videos that just show everything looking easy in all aspects, like no matter what topic you're talking about. But I think it's easy to forget that these things still take time. Like these things still take struggles and learning hurdles. And I try to be transparent about that, not only because I'm learning and I want to take my followers along for that ride, but also just to keep it real. Like not everything is smooth sailing, and I do not know everything by any means, but I'm willing to learn. And when I learn, I'll definitely share what I learn with you so you don't make the same mistakes that I do.
I mean, those are just such the characteristics of an entrepreneur in general, is being willing to try new things without being like afraid of doing it perfectly. And even just how you problem solve. I saw one of the post series that you had was related to like all these people who were messaging you all these questions and how that wasn't always resulting in them purchasing a piece. And then so you made an application form where they can actually like write down these questions and their vision. And you took what was a problem or somewhat difficult of all these people messaging you all these different questions and trying to get information on what a piece would look like. And you made a solution that not only just like solves that problem, but it creates like a whole new thing for you where now you have this structured way of like bringing in clients.
Yeah, and it's funny how each little struggle or problem, I really try to form a solution. And I think that's how my business has slowly grown. I also owe a huge amount of credit to the other refinishers in my community that have inspired me to do or suggested that I do some of the ideas that I come up with. But yeah, it's just a slow growing thing. It truly is. Like you encounter one problem and you try to find a solution, and then it just streamlines your business even just a little bit more. And then you move on and you come across your next problem, and I really just try to find a solution so my time can be used the most efficient way as possible.
And we've touched on it a few times. I did want to ask you about the Carolina Furniture Collective. This seems so cool. It's like a whole another aspect to this whole business that you've started is actually forming a community. It's so cool. It's like, it's obviously you guys have chemistry with each other. How did you all get together and create this group, the Carolina Furniture Collective?
Yeah, who would have thought? If someone told me when I started this page, you're going to have a group of friends that does exactly what you do, and you are not going to view them as competition, even though they live in your local area, you are going to view them as like your tribe, your like little brain trust operation. I'd have been like, no way. No way. You're telling me I met strangers on Instagram and formed an actual friendship with them? Impossible. That's exactly how it happened. Using a variety of hashtags, just like pages that are suggested, I found there's 6 of us. So I found 5 other girls that we really connected with, and we kind of formed our own little chat group. So we would pick each other's brains about like our local pricing, or we would have like certain clients reaching out to all of us and asking for a piece to be refinished. And we all wanted to be on the same page because we wanted to establish what the local refinishing prices and structure was like. We wanted to all be on the same page for that, which I think is beautiful. And I actually came across some of them in their advertisements on Facebook Market. I was like, wow, these girls are really talented. Oh, she's selling her piece for X amount of money. Maybe I should get closer on that page so no one's really underselling themselves. And then slowly we just built this friendship via Instagram. And one of them suggested that we form a collective. And the whole point of that was to increase our exposure. So each of us has a certain reach, but if you combine that all together, your reach, whatever, 6 times is more than quadrupled. So it was really for the purpose of expanding our reach as far as potential clients or potential customers go. And in turn, we just built this friendship, and now we really try to meet up like every other month. We have like little get-togethers, and all we do is talk about furniture. It's so great. Right now, it's just a Facebook page that we try to traffic people towards to view all of our available items. We're really working on making it a more formal website that people can potentially like purchase from the website and have some other retail opportunities too.
Wow, that's so smart. And when you have such a niche hobby like that, it's so nice to have people who get what you're talking about. It was funny. So Jess and some other members of her Carolina Furniture Collective, they were on the podcast Zebra before and after. And it was funny to hear you guys talking too, because sometimes he mentioned something like, oh, like, and I bet, when you guys see the listings, and then you all started laughing. And I was not even sure what listings meant. Like, I'm like, listings for furniture is what I'm guessing, but I'm not sure. You could tell you guys not only got what that meant, but you got why that would be funny and how that's such a thing when the listings come out. And
our little furniture joke is so nerdy.
It's so cute. But I think like having like something so niche to bond over, but also just like it just automatically brings you in and brings you guys closer. And you can tell you guys are all like very close and very comfortable with each other. But also like I definitely think, you must be like, growing exponentially because you have each other to like bounce off of and get feedback from. And it just takes things to another level.
Yeah, I think that was really the whole point, to just kind of have an alliance with people that get what you do for both personal growth and feedback, suggestions, running things by each other, but also for the bigger picture of actual business growth. And this may be way easier to build a bigger business model with all 6 of us than anything we could do individually. But it is truly amazing. There are a lot of downsides to social media, don't get me wrong, but it is truly amazing. If you have a particular hobby or a particular interest, I'm incredibly surprised at how many like-minded people I found using social media in a positive way to build true friendships with. And that's probably true for any interest or any hobby that you might have.
I think that's definitely evident when we're looking at your page as well. And from the side of somebody who thinks this is interesting and who also knows, honestly, the Instagram search isn't great. Sometimes when I want to, like, if I want to see more of something, it's so nice that you have this greater group of people. I can click on other people's page and be like, oh, okay, there's what this person is doing. And this is really interesting to me. And this isn't showing on my follow you page because it's not a Kim Kardashian video. And so, until she gets into this stuff.
Come on, Kim.
Come on, Kim. So I think from that perspective, like as someone who views it, it's actually really helpful as well. And one thing I did want to highlight that you spoke about as well, coming from the sales perspective, when it comes to putting yourself out there and putting out a new product, especially I think when you're growing, it's so easy to undervalue yourself, probably undervalue and overvalue, but I think in a space where people will definitely talk you down if they can, it's so nice to have other people be able to say like, hey, this is actually what we're seeing. This is what the market looks like. Don't let that person tell you that they'll pay $5 for it. And can you bring it over across town an hour away? This is how it is when I sell my furniture. I'm like, no, that's way more work for me. I'm just going to donate it to Goodwill at this point. But I think that really helps to be able to have other people in your space and even ask questions too about different things with what you're doing. But to be able to validate you and say, hey, you're doing a good job and ask for more. I feel this is always my thing with everything. I'm like, you can ask for more, I think. Just throw it out there, see what people will pay for it. And I think it's hard for us to take things that we're working on and to say, hey, like, I think this has value.
No, you are so right, Michelle. I was definitely undervaluing myself for a really long time, up until the point where this collective formed. And we call it, when you're saying don't be afraid to ask for more, we call that the organic raspberry approach. Because why are organic raspberries so dang expensive? What is it about these organic raspberries? They sell. Are they that much better than the regular raspberries? We don't really know. But we call it the organic raspberry approach, where you have the confidence to not undersell yourself and reach for that slightly higher price margin. And those girls really are like accountability partners. Like, Jess, don't you dare sell that for less than X amount. That's worth so much more. And it really helps navigate the haggling that can happen on like spaces like Facebook Market, especially.
And I don't know if this carries, but in sales, we always talk about how the people who pay the least are the biggest pain in the butt. It's the 80-20 thing.
I was just talking about this 80-20 yesterday. It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true. But the people that are like your 20% are the people that are making you the most money. I literally just listened to this. I loved it so much.
It's so true. Like, you got those people who are like, how much is it? Okay, perfect. That seems like very, very worth it. And then you got someone like hassling you and nagging you, and they're not going to pay you for what you did.
Can you fix this? Can you fix that?
Yeah.
Can you throw in this? Actually, I can't come there on Friday. I'm going to come there next month. And you're like, you are so annoying. It's always how it is. And we always, whenever we have people come to us, like new people especially, and they're like, oh, this client wants this, da, da, da. And I'm like, how much is this person spending? Because I'm going to guess, and I don't think it's high. And even like you were saying earlier with your forms and having people ask a bunch of questions, a lot of times you're like, okay, are you serious, or are you just putting together this hypothetical and I'm just talking to you because you got free time?
No, that is exactly why I made the forum, because I think people, and we all like to do it, we like to dream up ideas and dream up the possibilities of things. And people were eating up a lot of my time, probably unknowingly, but like sending me pictures of their personal items, like, hey, what would you do with this? How much would this cost? What color would you paint this? And I was spending a lot of time responding to these people thoughtfully and trying to respond in a kind way, thinking these would potentially be different clients. But 9 times out of 10, it would not propel into an actual booking for me. So it's like, you know what? I'm going to filter out the people who are not serious. I'm going to make them give a little effort on their part to fill out this form. And if they're truly interested, it's like a 8-question form.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're truly interested, then they should have no problem taking the time to give me the information that I need to appropriately quote them. And now that I have this like application form, I would say I've gotten like 10 or 12 responses, and all but 1 or 2 have actually booked with me. So
Wow.
It's definitely cut out a lot of the hypotheticals or people that just want to chat about the possibilities of their furniture, which I can't blame them. It's fun to talk about, but it also takes up a lot of my time.
I think that's so true. And especially as you grow and you start to work on different clients' products and answering people's like questions about the process and that sort of thing, you have to be able to cut something out because unfortunately we don't have unlimited time. And so we want to be able to use it and focus it on places where we can not only grow our business, but also grow our community. So I totally understand that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of time, you're an ER physician assistant. And I know you said the thing about having 15 days off, but I think you're making it sound generous because I know with a job like being in the ER, especially during COVID times, it's not like you just come home and you're just, relaxed. It takes some time to recover from that.
I wish.
Turn it off. On, off.
Oh, meditation mode the second I walk into the door.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people, they would think, oh, I'm working a full-time job. I don't have time for this. How do you balance starting this business and this passion with your full-time job?
I am so glad you asked me this question because I didn't have this in my little notes, but it is maybe one of my favorite things about this particular hobby is it really doesn't take a lot of time every day. And this is true for so many things in life, I feel like. 20 minutes a day, every day, can accomplish so much. Even if I just have 20 minutes to go out into my garage and take off the old existing hardware, I'm a step closer to my next prepping step or my next step in the project. Then maybe the next day I go out and I only have 30 minutes and I just clean it. I'm still a step closer. It doesn't take like earth-shattering amounts of time, but it takes small windows of time built up consistently over months to a year, and you'd be amazed at what you can accomplish because there are some days I just don't have it in me. I work 10-hour days. I work 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. My morning, quote, actually around noontime, is when I go out in my garage and try to get something done, and sometimes that's 20 minutes. Sometimes I have a whole day to dedicate, and those are my dream days, but those only happen maybe once a week. So 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. There's tons of really good stopping points where I don't get into anything too deep and I can, clean up and go to work. But yeah, 20 minutes a day, you'd be shocked at how much you can really accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective because I think a lot of us are waiting, until we have hours of time so that we can start something. I find myself doing this with the podcast a lot, like, oh, well, I can't work on it today because I don't have a big chunk of time. But just doing something for a small amount of time over time is going to make a bigger difference than these giant chunks here and there. So I think kind of getting yourself in that habit of doing something regularly for a small amount of time, that's a great thing to move you forward. And I'm sure like just even doing something for a short amount of time, I'm sure you feel like that accomplishment of moving forward towards a day.
Yeah, sometimes it's a really slow process, but eventually you still get there.
You just nail file your way.
Just
nail file this corner.
File that dresser down. Using the nail file.
Jess, we talked a little bit about going into this and going into it pretty blind. Would you feel like there was anything, though, in your childhood or anything you did early on that indicates like an interest towards this space?
That's a good question. I think I've always been interested in making things look pretty around me. Like I'm certainly more productive and happier in a space that's like aesthetically pleasing and matches my style. And I've been like this since I was little. Like I remember designing my room as a little kid and everything had to be just so. And I loved picking out paint colors. And when we go to the hardware store for whatever reason, I would like look at all the paint swatches and plan out my future home.
Aww.
And like, okay, that my living room's going to be this color. And it probably look like a crayon box. But I'm like, picking out all these pretty paint colors and planning out what my house is going to look like. And I loved rearranging my room when I was little, like rearranging the furniture and redecorating just with what I had. And I think I've always, like I mentioned earlier, had a knack for making things pretty on a budget or making things pretty with just the things that I have on hand, not necessarily spending tons of money, which I don't always have. So yeah, I think that's part of just the roots of what makes me enjoy this so much. And it's kind of nice to learn handy new skills of, how to fix stuff or how to build stuff. I've really enjoyed working with my hands, and I might get a little bit of that from my dad. He was super handy.
Yeah. And overall, like just in creating this business, creating this passion, this hobby, this business on the side, how do you feel like that's changed you?
It's been a really, really good distraction. And I mean distraction in the best way possible. Being in the ER over the last few years has really been taxing. I've never really had to try so hard at like maintaining a healthy mental space until COVID. It's getting better, but I mean, we lost a lot of PAs during COVID, and it was just a very hard time. And so having this space, this outlet that doesn't involve traveling, that really doesn't involve spending money, that is something that my mind can just escape to, has been truly, truly much needed in the last year and a half. It just gives my mind room to breathe, if you will. And it's like my escape from anything stressful. Recently it's been COVID, but when COVID's over, something new will come along, and it's it's just a space that I can control the pace. I can block out whatever is on my mind at that time and just create and just be. And it's a really beautiful thing. And it's been kind of lucrative as well.
Yeah.
That's so important, I think, to remember for anything that you're adding on to your life. It helps if it also helps you get into a good mental space, if it's something that you enjoy, because I think sometimes we can feel the pressure in this world to be like, oh, I need a side hustle, I need hobbies, I need to do all these things. And it's like, if it's not bringing you happiness, if it's not bringing you into a good mental space, you don't necessarily have to feel the pressure to add it on. And there are things that the same thing that ends up being a hobby and the same thing that actually creates that meditative space for you can also end up being lucrative. I do love that you spoke about that specifically.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes I have to remind myself of that. My very type A-ness sometimes allows what's supposed to be this mental escape and this hobby that I love so much to become stressful when I put too much on my plate or commit to too many custom pieces, or like my garage is way too full and I didn't intend it to be that full. I have to remind myself that like this is an addition. This is something that I get to control how much is on my plate. Not everything like that in life is in your control, but this is one space that I get to control that. But I have to remind myself of that sometimes. It's so easy for me at least, to get in a little over my head just because, things are going great and people are reaching out and I can't say no to all this custom and commission work, but I can. And I have to remind myself. Kevin is like super type B, which is great for me, but I'll have to send you guys this meme. It is a meme of two people, type A and B, going on a walk, and the type B person is like, hey, why don't we slow down and like stop and smell the flowers? And the type A person gets all aggressive and like smells the flowers like aggressively, and then like picks more flowers and smells those flowers. And then like 2 slides later, it's like the type A person has a trophy that they're holding above their head that they are the flower smelling champion. It's like, no, you missed the point. This is supposed to be like an enjoyable process. And I'm like, that is so true for me. So I just have to remember to like I don't get a trophy at the end of this. This is for my own mental well-being as priority 1.
Definitely. Yeah, me and Michelle, I feel that because I definitely lean type A and she definitely leans type B. And I'm always like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this. Like I'm like trying to like plot all these things that we need to do. And Michelle's like, listen, like don't put your list on me. Like we're not like, that's not what it's about. And it's actually true because you go to work, you have a job, there's a place to send that type A energy, but your side hustle, your business, your passion, that's about really being in it and being present for it and being deep in it. It's not necessarily about like, how can I like monetize this so quickly or make this amazing so quickly. It's about like actually enjoying every step of it.
100%.
We'll replay that next time we're fighting about the podcast. Always easier said than done.
It is. It's hard for us. It's really hard for us to take that step back and be like, okay, why did I start this? What was my number one priority? And where am I right now? Because you have 25 customs booked for the next month.
How did we
Could
get
get
here? With our flower smelling trophies.
Isn't that so perfect?
Like the perfect meme.
My final question is, if you were going back to when you started or even talking to somebody who wanted to either get into the space or start a hobby, what sort of advice would you have given yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess my best advice is just to dive in. Like, don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait to allow you to collect all of the tools that you think you might need. Just dive in. And some people say start with an easy project. But honestly, if you really want to like learn if this is something that you love and enjoy, I say go all in. Challenge yourself, get in a little bit over your head. You can always take a step back. You are in control of what's allowed to overwhelm you here. But just start. That's the best piece of advice I really have. Because the more you do, the more you learn, the more you know. That's one of my quotes.
Oh, I love that. I think that's like the perfect advice, because even with podcasting, people will ask us and they're like, what microphone, what platform, what this? And it's like, you can do all the things perfectly, or you can just start and you're going to get better over time. And I think starting is really the hardest part. So I think that's great advice.
Agreed. And things just kind of naturally grow. Once you start, you realize that you need business cards, or you realize that you need a logo. And if you try to do that all at once, not only is it expensive and overwhelming, but it might not be what the next step of your business or hobby actually needs. If you just allow those things to present themselves as the next step, your business grows so much more organically. And while it seems slow, it's really not slow. Like, for example, my form, and then once I started doing commission work, I formed a contract to protect my clients and protect myself. And then I realized I wanted tags on my pieces, so I could kind of build my brand. So then I printed tags, and it just kind of slowly evolves, and you slowly invest just as things present themselves. And it's easier that way. It feels less overwhelming when you just let your business show you what it needs next, rather than trying to anticipate everything, because that's exhausting.
And there's no way to know until you're actually doing it. I think I'm so guilty of planning. And then when you're actually in it, you're like, oh, this I didn't even think about. And also I have 50 things that I did think about that are irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing really makes that very clear very early on.
Yes, exactly. Just do it. Like Nike says.
Jess, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a great conversation. We really loved learning more about your business. I think I learned even more than I thought I would. I think you've given really, really great advice. And so we really appreciate having you on today.
Thank you so much, Sammy and Michelle. I absolutely love your podcast, and I'm so happy that you had me on today. I loved hanging out with you, and I will continue to be a big, big fan.
And if people want to find you, could you share some of your information, best places to follow you, that sort of thing?
Yeah, thanks for asking. You can follow me on Instagram at oakandgrain_restoration. And then you can also find the Carolina Furniture Collective on Facebook only under the group Carolina Furniture Collective.
And we'll make sure to link to those things in our show notes as well.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Jess, for being on.
Thank you so much, guys. Love your show. You do a great job.
Thank you so much.